Sarah?
John, so glad you could join us.
Grateful for the invite. Thanks.
John and I have become acquainted over the Stop Operation Streamline Coalition. John was pastor of the Southside Presbyterian Church in Tucson in the early 1980s, when that church became the first one in the country to declare itself a sanctuary for Central Americans who were fleeing violence and political oppression with very strict Reagan immigration restrictions. Eventually, over 500 sanctuary sites in the country joined the sanctuary movement, providing food, shelter, legal advice, and transportation to Canada and other sanctuary sites. It was an absolute lifesaver for many, many asylum seekers. John, we're delighted you could join us, and I wonder if you could start the discussion with a few comments of your own.
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much for your gathering, and I'm very interested to hear how this conversation goes from Green Valley. I loved the guest editorial in the paper, and I think it was probably a community collaboration. But Lori, it was creative, it was original, it was terrific. Keep on.
I want you to know that I'm not really a little old lady in tennis shoes. I'm really a chingona.
Well, I'm just a little old man with hiking boots on. So that's what retirement is around here. I went to down 286 to Banwar and Sasabe yesterday. And it's with a group of students from the university. The university participates in a State Department sponsored program that brings students from Mexico and Central America and Latin America to the United States for, I think, 6-week periods, where they look at this country. And part of that, one day, Alvaro Enciso and I get to take them to the border and to say everything that you all know about United States immigration policy and prevention through deterrence, and proudly what Samaritans and No More Deaths and Humane Borders and all the and KBI and everyone is doing along this border on both sides. But one of the things we always do is take that group of students to the wall, right? And been doing it for years. And the students get to walk around, take pictures of the wall, ask questions, and then we go to Banwar and spend a lot of time talking there on the patio. At any rate, so we just get there, and here comes the Border Patrol with you have to leave. There's a no trespassing sign up here, and you need to get out of here, or we will order you to get out, which was a brand new experience for me. I'd been there 2 weeks before with another group, and no problem. And you all understand the history of that no trespassing sign thing from Green Valley and Tucson. So it was an interesting day to simply say, these guys, Border Patrol, are getting much more aggressive and changing policy whenever they feel like it, which means the union's back in charge of the Border Patrol again. It was a short interrupted time. And I think that's what we're going to have to look at, but it's just going to take more organizing and more confrontation with this Border Patrol union run operation as far into the future as I can see. But that's worthwhile work. And I'm delighted with what we have to work with, which is COVID is over relatively. And not only have the border humanitarian aid organizations survived, we've strengthened our organizations and our work and our imagination. And the best part of the day with those students in that area was I kept running into us. I kept running into Samaritans from Tucson and Green Valley. It was an encouraging sign. But the discouraging part that I wanted to share with you is I don't think the Biden administration knows what the hell they're doing. I think they're totally disorganized. They don't have a policy. I think the Biden administration sees the border as a political problem that recurs every 2 years, and they try to manage it every 2 years as their political problem, not their policy problem, because I don't think they have one. And I think that was true in 2020 during that election. They had a great policy paper that a lot of people and a lot of organizations pitched in on. I thought it was a really well-worded paper, and I was hopeful. And then they were just incompetent in the first year of their administration in trying to do this stuff that they said they were going to do. And Mayorkas is not, he's not capable of running DHS. He's a Cuban. He doesn't know anything about the Southwest border. He knows little about immigration except from the Florida Cuban context. And then Kamala Harris goes to Central America because she's in charge of policy. And what's the policy? She says, "Don't come." Right? That was it. And they've been, I think, manipulating Title 42 as a political problem because they want it to stay in place. Their arguments in court have just been in order to keep the thing going as long as they can because it resolves a political problem for them. So I'm not very impressed. And I still think they're dealing with it as a political problem. So what do? We represent a majority of the American people who want immigration reform. And because Biden administration and the Congress only deal with it as a recycled political problem every 2 years and try to use it for that purpose, I think we have a lot of work to do. But I think we're coming out of the COVID pandemic with a strengthened presence here on the border. I'm so grateful for everything that everyone has done. But quite frankly, I do not believe that individual nations, whether it's the United States of America or any European Union gathering, or anyone else anywhere, is going to deal effectively with global migration until we figure out that it's a global problem and it has to find a global table. and have that table created, because it doesn't exist now, to sit down and deal with this global phenomenon, and hold all the nations accountable to a set of standards that are articulated by that global table. That's a long way away, and I don't think it's going to happen. I think we're going to create that table around climate change and saving the planet. That's going to be the immediate need. And it's only after we do that and create those forums and those tables and those places to make decisions that we're going to get to migration and global resolutions to that. So we got a long struggle to go, and I think we need to organize and resist the current incompetence with the strength that we do have and the experience we do have, and all of the conversations that I think need to happen now with the end of the pandemic and a beginning of a brand new reality on migration. This is not a political problem. This is a human rights problem, and we got work to do. So that's the rant from Tucson this morning.
Well, there's a lot there. Thank you. I was trying to keep up. I'm glad we're recording this. I'm gonna open it up to questions, if that's all right with you, John. If anybody
Sure.
has any questions. And Jane, are you raising your hand? Go ahead, unmute yourself. And
hi, my name is Jane Shuttleworth. I'm from Iowa. So I just want to say, I want to thank you for your message. There's a lot of hope in there. Give some perspective. I want to say that up here, there's actually people up here that are organizing, that want to work more with people down on the border. We have some emerging groups happening here, and they've already, the Samaritans have already been great mentors. But I just wanted to bring up, I'm involved with another organization called Citizens Climate Lobby, which is a bipartisan group that focuses on advocacy and getting Republicans and Democrats together to talk, and how to listen and how to frame things in a way that other people will listen. And recently I've been encouraged, I've been doing that in relation to climate, but recently I've been encouraged to see some editorials in the New York Times. I think Barb Lemon shared one recent one with me, where the Republicans are actually coming up with some innovative approaches to immigration reform that kind of more go at it from the business perspective, but it gives us some talking points and a way to reach out to Republicans and build some bridges here. And here in Iowa, we have 76,000 openings for jobs. And our governor, who did send the National Guard down to the Texas border, has announced at the same time a new initiative to welcome Afghan refugees and others, and to integrate them into our workforce. So I just wrote a letter to the editor thanking her for doing that, which surprises myself, but I'm just bringing that up because there's ways for us to begin to open this dialogue.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I've been reading more from the Chamber of Commerce, more conservative wing of the Republican Party. They're talking about immigration reform now, and they're doing it from exactly your perspective, Jane. And that's always been the I don't know, the problem, I guess, in the dialogue between right and left around immigration policy. And that is the right has always needed that source of labor. and it's been true for forever, right? Since the 1920s. And they've always said the right thing. We need immigration reform. We need this labor force, but they've never put any muscle behind it. They've never put their money and their very effective lobbying capability behind that. And I think that's one of the clues. I think you're on the right track, is we need to get after those folks to put their money and their lobbying efforts behind immigration reform. And then we can have a serious dialogue about what that looks like.
Hold them accountable.
Yep.
Jane, could you repeat the name of your organization? We're thrilled to have guests from the middle of the country, and somebody wanted to ask for the name of your organization again.
Well, I was recently, there's a group called Iowa Migrant Movement for Justice, and they provide legal aid. And I wanted to volunteer with them, and they asked me what I'd like to do. And I said, I would like to start a writers group. And my writers group idea was an inspiration that I got from the Samaritans, because I've been down to the border with the Green Valley people several times volunteering, and I was inspired. So Lori Jers has been providing me some tips, and Allison Ball and Barb Lemon. And in the meantime, the same week that I started working on this idea, I got an email, and there's people from across Iowa that are really concerned about, mostly they come from faith groups, and they're really concerned. And we've been meeting via Zoom and getting to know each other. And so this is kind of an emerging group, and I don't know where it's going. I kind of, so anyway, it's very exciting to see this happen. And a lot of them are already plugged in through their churches, and some of them have started nonprofits, working with people and teaching English. And so it's a really interesting mix of bandwidth of people that hopefully we can be part of what you're talking to, part of the struggle ahead, John.
Great.
And what was the climate change, the climate group that you also mentioned?
The climate group is called Citizens Climate Lobby, CCL. And they're a really good model for about being civil, how to try to reach out to people who think different than you. They try very hard to be bipartisan. I'm sure there's chapters down there. It's a nationwide organization, actually international even.
And John, there was another question in the chat. Did the students get to see the wall?
Oh yeah, we stayed for a while. Just said, well, we need to convene a meeting with Tucson Sector Border Patrol and land managers and humanitarian aid organizations, and work out a relationship here. If you're going to change it day to day, let's just let the students have 20 minutes at the wall and take pictures, and then we'll leave. And he agreed.
Okay. And Carol has a question. Go ahead, Carol.
Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay. John, how do we get a hold of this 2020 paper? Because I'm a member of a very active League of Women Voters in the state of Washington, and we have some rather significant movers and shakers. They're all women. Patty Murray, Pramila Jayapal, who, we see nationally on the news quite frequently, and we would love to communicate with them what we want done.
Right. It's the Democratic campaign policy paper, and one of the divisions, one of the parts of that paper was on immigration, and it's like 4 or 5 pages of recommendations about what they wanted to see done if they were elected in 2020. So you can just Google that.
Okay,
Democratic Policy 2020.
okay, all right, okay.
Okay.
Great idea. Laurie, go ahead.
Yeah, John, how are we gonna fight the union? How are we gonna fight the union? I guess we're just gonna keep on going down to the wall and doing our searches and deal with it on a case by case basis. You know, not every agent's telling us to get out of there, but it's starting to happen more and more, that's for sure. Do you have any relationship with Chris Magnus? Do you have any backstory on him getting fired, and is he a possible ally in any way?
Wow. Hadn't thought about that last question. You know, he didn't last very long. The union got him out of there for all the reasons you could imagine, because his job, as he stated it, and as the Biden administration stated it, was to reform the Border Patrol, like he did in policing in Richmond, California, and here again in Tucson. And he did a great job. I mean, he really did. We had a great relationship with Magnus when he was police chief here, and reached some really very helpful agreements, like the police wouldn't hassle day laborers on the corner, or would be a part of a day labor program at Southside Church that put the day laborers on church property, and Border Patrol would agree to respect that and understand that was an important public safety measure, and would support it along with organizations in the barrio. So he was really solid, but they got rid of him in a hurry, and it was the union that did it. And they're trying to find their way now into what it means if they're back in control of the Border Patrol structure. And I don't think they have that figured out. But we need to push back with the Biden administration about who and what are they going to do with regard to that organization that they're responsible for now for another 2 years anyway. And I think that's a really important agenda, is to press Biden. I mean, they just use Magnus as this is my thesis about lurching from election cycle to election cycle. When they fire Magnus right before the election last fall. And so he was the sacrificial symbol for managing that political moment by the administration. And Mayorkas is probably the next one to go. And that's okay with me, because I don't think he's ever understood the Southwest border at all, or the whole immigration phenomenon here in this hemisphere. So we'll see, but there are going to be some changes happen, and we need some serious organization to affect that. We can deal with this sector, and I think that's doable. I'm not sure about nationally, because part of my disappointment is the national immigration organizations who seem to move from election cycle to election cycle, and their major goal is to get Latina voters out and to vote in each election cycle, not change the policy of the United States and get genuine reform. Hell, we can't even get DACA done right now. That's how bad this
I know.
context is, in my judgment.
Lori, do you have any follow-up there that you want to add?
Well, yeah, I mean, okay, we gotta just do the best we can here in our own sector
Yeah.
and in our own worlds. What do you suggest we try to do with Cisco Mani and Ruben Gallego?
Yeah. Well, I think that Siscomani just needs to be neutralized. We need to just take him out of the news as much as we can, and to criticize his positions because they don't represent his district. And I think that Ruben is an interesting new development, and he would be great, a great voice in the Senate as opposed to what we have now. But the politics of that are ferocious, and you're looking at someone that's not my competence. I simply don't know. I'll let more experienced folks in the changing politics of Arizona to figure that one out.
Just a clarification for those who aren't from Arizona, Siscomani is our newly elected Republican representative who's, to me, he's being showcased by the Republicans as a good Latino. And Ruben Gallego I'm not sure what his last name is, but anyhow, he's challenging Sinema when she's up for re-election. Okay, and I saw a hand. Was that Carol? Was that you had a question? Go ahead. Unmute yourself and go ahead.
My question once again is to John, and that is, what do we need to understand about our southwest border? Coming from Washington, I live in an area that has an extremely large Latino population. We, have places like Mount Vernon that grow more tulips than anywhere else in the world.
Right.
And they are a very significant presence for us. But what is it that we need to understand about the southwest border?
Yeah, and I've been out in eastern Washington where all them apple trees are.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Eastern Washington is definitely Latino country.
Yeah. And folks are pretty well organized out there. I was pretty impressed with undocumented labor there who's been pretty well organized for a while. At any rate, I think we got to stop playing with the minor issues that we have to deal with, but we need to develop a vision that folks can begin to relate to about what immigration reform really means on this border and for border policy in this hemisphere. Because, it's really interesting how the migration has changed just since Samaritans has been organized, both in Tucson and Green Valley and Ajo and all the other organizations that have formed since 2000. And back then it was what, 70-80% folks who were migrating from Mexico to work. And then it shifted to most of the people were from Central America, fleeing not only poverty, but needing work, but also fleeing the control of gangs and cartels over their lives and their safety in Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras. That whole region became the epicenter of migration until recently, and now it's because of circumstances and court decisions. It's a major migration from Haiti, Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela. And those are very different contexts that drive migration. And that will continue to change as long as we don't have a policy that recognizes the difference and recognizes what we need to do and what this hemisphere needs to do to deal with all of those very, very different causes for migration. And it ain't going to change because we make a decision. It's going to change because we change our foreign policy in this hemisphere and our relationship with other nations that are the sending nations now. It's a very complex set of questions.
Wow.
But, you know, the ultimate vision of border is gonna have to be, in my judgment, that we change the fundamental policy from enforcement to document the border. And we know, everybody knows in this region that enforcement has failed. It's failed every time it's been tried. And each new phase of enforcement fails again. That's not a policy that's going to work. And I think we can make a great case for that. Now, that's the toughest case politically, right? How do you tell people, I don't care how many feet you add to the wall and how many walls you add, or how many Border Patrol agents you put out there, or how many drones and helicopters and technology, it isn't gonna work, and it hasn't worked. And so we have a vision of a documented border where everyone who crosses can get a temporary visa if they're looking for work. They can get a temporary visa if they're looking for protection and safety and political asylum from whatever they're fleeing. And it will, for the first time, enable the United States of America to know who's crossing the border and where they are. Which is a radical idea, I know. There are 11 million people here right now that the United States doesn't know what their name is and doesn't know where they are and doesn't know what to do about them. That's not good policy.
11 million?
11 million. That's the government's estimate. I think it's more than that, but it's at least that. And it's one of the great failures of their enforcement strategy, right?
Okay.
And we've been through, you know, when that didn't work, obviously, then they tried, oh, well, we'll lock everybody up and we'll create a whole private prison industry for profit. And that didn't work. And then they tried, oh, we'll take their kids away from them and disappear their children permanently. And that didn't work. And now we're just blundering around with basically no policy at all, lurching from court decision to court decision in Texas and elsewhere. It's a failure. What you see? Did you all see the article the other day about they found during the Trump administration, at the end of it, they discovered 40 tunnels under that damn wall. One of them the size of 4 football fields. You know, it's just, we can make a great case that they are classic failure over 30 years. And they need to change. And the change is, I think, doable. It's not going to be easy in the face of all the racist, political ads. But I think it can be, I think we can make a great case that we just need to document the migration at the border. And after a, brief check for criminal background, give people a temporary visa to see if they can find work here. If they can, we'll extend that visa. If they can't, we know where they are and who they are.
Go ahead, Sarah.
John, what do you think about picking up on your border documentation idea? What do you think about bringing immigration judges down to the border so that asylum seekers within a reasonable time could have their asylum claim adjudicated and not be in 4 years waiting throughout the country to go to court? Is that something that you think could work?
Yeah, if they reform the immigration judges. I mean, what the percentage that they're granting political asylum looks like now, and the complete lack of any legal support for those folks making their case. Oh yeah, well, we'll consider your political asylum application, but meantime, you have to be sent back to Mexico, and all of the terror that Central American and Latin American and Mexican applicants for political asylum are enduring under those circumstances. I mean, it's just horrible. What the extortion and rape and exploitation of those people are in border cities in Juarez and Nogales and other places. So you really need to reform the political asylum process. It's not political asylum according to United States law anymore, and hasn't been since 96 when they rolled over all the reforms we had tried to accomplish with political asylum system and process. Yeah, that's certainly, I mean, that's one of the things the Biden administration promised to do, right? And they haven't. They just haven't done it. Even that, because, well, that's a complex question, because it takes reforming the immigration judges too, and tell them what United States law says about political asylum. You just can't send the bastards to the border and get a reasonable legal reform. It just ain't gonna work. These guys and women have a long track record of failure as well.
Well, besides that, they were going to have the Border Patrol be the judges.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. What a great idea.
Susan, you had a question? You had your hand up? Go ahead.
Okay. I'm from the Tucson Samaritans. So I see John regularly at our meetings, but I just wanted to say, what way can we persuade Senator Kelly to be more of a leader as far as not doing the border security, but doing the border humanitarian issues? We went to visit his liaison this week, and his liaison knew everything that we brought up, but nothing. But as he said, there was only 30 seconds in the State of the Union address about immigration. It was they just seemed to be waiting for some kind of leader, and we were hoping that maybe Senator Kelly could help with that, as far as immigration goes, but anyhow, what do you think?
I think, you know, what did Kelly do during the last election cycle, right? He wanted to reinstate Title 42.
Yep.
That was his policy wisdom. And that policy wisdom was just to get through that election. Right? Now, I understand. I've been in. I think he's getting his border and immigration policy from Gabrielle,
Yeah, I think so.
because she knows, she's smart. She knows this border, and she was very open to conversations. Now, I have to tell you, the whole time she was in Congress and before her first run for Congress, she would invite me to and other representatives of the border organizations to sit down and have serious conversations about policy. She could, and I was impressed. She knows a lot, and I'm sure that's where he's getting his border and immigration advice. But I also know that at the end of those conversations, when we had lunch, Gabrielle would tell me that I was right, and she knew that, but she was elected from that district in Cochise County and other places, and she could only do so much. We had very candid conversations, and so I think that's true of Mark as well. But as long as he sees it as what happens from election cycle to election cycle, we're not going to get a lot of traction. We're going to get good conversations, but no leadership on border and immigration issues, from my experience, at any rate.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? This has just been very, very helpful and informative. Sarah, do you have any final comments or words for John or the group?
I just had a thought, John. Things happen so fast, and we just, one thing after the other, whether it's a transit ban or now we're going to have people come in on parole instead of asylum, which they're legally supposed to have. How do we keep from bouncing from one issue to another and really focus on the big picture to actually make a change?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the biggest problem is not here in Southern Arizona and Northern Sonora. I am delighted with where we are at this point after the pandemic. I think our organizations are strong. I think they've had a great track record through a very difficult time when everything was in flux. And I think we have a lot to offer to national immigration organizations who seem to be unable to answer your question. Where are we going, and what's our vision, and what do we think we need to do in coordination? Because we still represent a majority of the American people. And I think we're well positioned, but oh my God, the national organizations have not functioned very well, in my judgment. And so we need to do some internal work to say, come on, get your vision beyond the next election cycle and how you're going to register voters. And I think that's important, but obviously it's not going to accomplish the reform that all of us need. But don't get too hopeful about that, because I really don't think that it's going to happen until that global table is able to sit down after we achieve climate policy change. I think we're looking at 50 years.
God.
And I don't want to kid people. I think we need to start working as though this is a 50-year struggle. And the best part about it is the young generation is already mobilized to make the first change and save the planet. And we're just going to have to wait in line and help them understand the next step is migration. That's a long range vision, but I think it's true. and I think that's what I'd like to see us understand and undertake with whatever time we old geezers have left.
Wow. Okay, anybody else have a comment or a question? We're so appreciative of your joining us, John. I don't
Well,
want
it's
to.
fun. It's
cut
fun
any-
to be at this point in the history of this border and begin to talk about a serious vision for reform and the length of time it's going to take. I grew up in the civil rights movement, right? And I am still grateful for what I learned during that time, from extraordinary leadership nationally during that movement. And I have to tell you, confess to you, that at some point after the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act was passed, I was with some of those sainted leaders in a meeting, and in my enthusiasm, I said to them, "We changed the whole world in 5 years." And they said, "Sit down, boy. Let me tell you about 200 years of struggle and sacrifice and work in order to bring us to this point." And that's what you need to understand if you're going to be any good at all to us in the future. And I've tried to learn that, and I've tried to apply that to where we are now in this struggle for immigration reform. And I think it's true. And I think that that's the kind of work and vision we need to undertake these days.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it and value your comments and the work you've done over the years. So we'll carry on and try to instill these thoughts into our children and grandchildren so they can carry on.